Yo, what is up? It is I, your boy Hoops, and I have got something pretty fun for you guys today. Obviously, you probably know that Sinnoh is all the rage these days with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl coming out and Legends Arceus coming out, so obviously Sinnoh is kinda like the theme right now for Pokemon, and in that spirit, I decided I wanted to do something cool that was Sinnoh related today, and that is none other than ranking every one of the Sinnoh Pokemon from worst to best. If you followed the channel for very long, I have given my opinions on a bunch of different Pokemon in the past, including some Sinnoh Pokemon, but I've never really ranked every single Pokemon in a generation, so I thought it would be fun to give you guys my opinion on literally all of them, so that is what we're going to be doing today. There is 107 Sinnoh Pokemon, so this is going to be pretty rapid fire style, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to share my thoughts on these Pokemon. Really quick though, before we get started, I do have a special announcement to make, and that is that this Saturday, there is actually going to be a brand new episode of Pokemon Cardinal coming to the channel. You heard me right. Pokemon Cardinal finished a little while ago. It's my flagship Fakemon series where I created a region based on Canada and kind of went through the story as if it were a game. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. But basically, there's going to be a new episode of that. It's going to be a one-off special type of thing, but it's coming this Saturday. It's called Pokemon Cardinal Episode 0. So, I mean, if that doesn't get you hyped, I don't know what will. Be sure to tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope to see you there. And with that said, let's get into the Sinnoh Pokemon. Okay, so one thing I kinda already knew about Sinnoh's Pokemon, but I realized even more when I was putting together this list, is that Sinnoh has a phenomenal dex of Pokemon. Like, there is pretty much only one Pokemon from this generation that I actively despise, and all the others, I have my individual opinions about them, but I don't really hate them. There's only one Pokemon that I can say that I really dislike from this generation, which is really crazy considering there's over 100. Like, Sinnoh has got some amazing Pokemon. But speaking of that one Pokemon that I do despise from Sinnoh, at the bottom of the list at number 107 is Ambipom. I really do not like Ambipom. It is ugly. They didn't have to make it look the way it does. I realize not all Pokemon have to be super cool looking or something like that. Like, it's okay to have derps, but man, they just did my man Ambipom wrong, especially with it being an evolution to a previous Pokemon. So I just do not like Ambipom, which you probably already know because I've said it like a million times because I just actively dislike Ambipom that much. Next up is Purugly, and once again, I don't really hate Purugly like the rest of the Pokemon. I don't really hate the same way I hate Ambipom, or dislike Ambipom, I guess you could say. Hate is a strong word, but yeah, I can only like it so much when ugly is literally in its name, and being ugly is literally its whole motif. So yeah, Purugly is at the bottom of the list. Another Pokemon along those same lines is Probopass coming up next, and I don't dislike Probopass like a lot of other people do, but it is really goofy looking, and there are plenty of other Pokemon in Sinnoh that aren't goofy looking that I just like more. Number 104 is Chingling, and Chingling is toward the bottom of the list because I never really liked Chingling when I was first introduced to it. I had a really bad first impression with it. I didn't really like how it evolved into Chimecho because it looks nothing like Chimecho. I could never tell where its face was. That was really hard for me to figure out for a while, so Chingling just left a bad taste in my mouth when I was first introduced to it, and it hasn't left me yet, so that's why it's lower on this list. Up next at number 103 and 102 is Bronzor and Bronzong, and these guys I'm pretty much just completely indifferent to. I'm not really super impressed by Bronzor because it's kind of just like a mirror with a face. There's not really a whole lot to it, and Bronzong sort of looks weird in my opinion. Like, I don't hate it once again, but it just not really my type of Pokemon, so that's why they're here. At number 101 is Bibarel, the evolution to Bidoof, and Bidoof, I will let you know, is much higher up on this list, but Bibarel is just lower because it's basically just a derp like Bidoof is, but it doesn't have any of the charm that Bidoof has, so it's just this stupid looking beaver Pokemon that just doesn't really have anything going for it other than being an HM slave, so I mean, what are you gonna do? At number 100 is Gastrodon, and Gastrodon is pretty much this low just because it looks kind of weird. I mean, it is a sea slug, so it's gonna be looking a little unusual by default, but yeah, once again, just like kind of like Bronzor and Bronzong, just not my cup of tea. At number 99 is Skuntank, and once again, I can really only rank a Pokemon like this so high, even though I don't dislike it, because I mean, its cry is literally just like a fart, and like, farting is kind of like a big theme of this Pokemon, so I mean, yeah, it kind of has to be lower. At number 98 is Glameow, and unfortunately, it did not make it much higher than its evolution Perugly. It is one of the more iconic Sinnoh Pokemon. It was one of the earlier ones to be revealed, if I'm not mistaken, so it does have that going for it, but other than that, it doesn't really have much else. At number 97 is Mothim, and once again, I don't dislike Mothim at all. It's cool that it's part of a split evolution with Wormadam, but I mean, I would never really use one in a playthrough, and it just doesn't stick out amongst all of the other Sinnoh Pokemon who are phenomenal in my opinion, so yeah. At number 96 is Kricketune, and I hate that I have to rank Kricketune this low because Kricketune does have a lot going for it with its cry, "Dele dele whoop," and its motif being centered around music and stuff like that. I really, really like that. I appreciate that. But it is also kind of just an ugly Pokemon with its, like, it's not the prettiest Pokemon out there, so I mean, I kind of had to do it. I'm sorry, Kricketune. At number 95 is Cherrim, and Cherrim is this low because its default form completely obstructs the view of the Pokemon itself. I really never ever liked that. The Sunshine form of Cherrim is totally fine, I really like it a lot, but I really dislike how they made the default form the one that's all covered up, because you can't even see it. Like, what's the point of the Pokemon if you can't even see it? At number 94 is Wormadam, and similar to Mothim, I don't dislike this Pokemon. I think it's cool, it's got the split evolution and the forms, but it's certainly not my favorite in Sinnoh. I like its pre-evolution Burmy a lot more, so I mean, yeah. At number 93 is Drifblim, and it is also similar to Wormadam in that I like its pre-evolution a lot more as well. Drifblim kind of disappointed me as an evolution to Drifloon when I saw it for the first time, and once again, it's not a bad Pokemon, it's just I kind of would have liked to have seen something a little bit cooler or different when it comes to an evolution of Drifloon. At number 92 is Burmy, and yeah, I said I like Burmy more than Mothim and Wormadam, but not a whole lot more, obviously. It is one of the lower Sinnoh Pokemon for me, but I don't dislike it at all. That's the thing about Sinnoh, is that even though it's this low, Burmy is a Pokemon I have no problem with, which really does speak to the quality of Sinnoh's Pokedex. At number 91 is Shellos, and Shellos makes it this much higher compared to Gastrodon, because Shellos, even though it is still a sea slug, it's cute, it's got some endearment to it, it's got the two forms, which is awesome. It's not the kind of Pokemon I would use, which is why it is lower, but I'll give it some credit, it is pretty cute. At number 90 is Floatzel, and similar to Drifblim, when I had Buizel evolve into Floatzel for the first time, I kind of was disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. I don't really know what I was expecting from a Buizel evolution, but I just wasn't really too thrilled with Floatzel when I evolved it from Buizel. Like, Buizel was a part of my team and then evolved into Floatzel, and I kind of just didn't want it on my team as much anymore. So yeah, that's kind of stuck with me over the years, but once again, not a bad Pokemon. We've crossed into the 80s, and at number 89, 88, and 87 is Staravia, Staraptor, and Starly in that order. This is actually a really solid starting bird Pokemon, but the reason why Starly is my favorite as opposed to Staraptor is because I had another bad impression with Staraptor when I first saw it. I didn't like the name when I first saw it for the first time as a 12-year-old. I just thought Star and Raptor, and they just put them together in a name. Like, I thought that was really uncreative because I didn't know that Raptor was like a bird of prey. And so like now it's fine, now it's okay, but that was my impression back in the day, and so that kind of soured Star Raptor for me a little bit. But overall, really solid starting bird family. Up next at number 86 is Bidoof, and you might be kind of surprised that Bidoof isn't higher. And I mean, I love Bidoof, like Bidoof is great, obviously, but it is still just a beaver, starting rodent, normal type Pokemon, and there's so much going for so many of the other Sinnoh Pokemon that are out there, so Bidoof unfortunately kind of had to take a back seat to those guys. Coming up next is Toxicroak and Krogunk, and these guys are really cool. I think they're a cool take on a frog Pokemon. I think they've got an interesting, cool look to them, but they've never quite been the kind of Pokemon that I would personally put on my team, which is why they're lower on the list. At number 83 is Groudal, and this is very, very low for a starter Pokemon of any evolutionary stage, and that is simply because Groudal kind of embodies the awkward middle stage starter evolution that the middle stage starter evolutions are known for. It's just like the poster child. It looks pretty awkward and just kind of like literally it's a teenager that's going through puberty. So yeah, that's why it's lower. At number 82 is Badoo, and I think Badoo is adorable, but there's also a little element of it that is unnecessary, I feel like. Like, I think that Roselia didn't really need a pre-evolution. It could have just got the evolution in Roserade and been fine, so it wasn't like the most necessary Pokemon in the world, which is why it's a bit lower, but it's really cute, so it gets some points for that. At number 81 is Carnivine, and Carnivine, once again, it's not the kind of Pokemon I would ever use on my team, but I really do appreciate it a lot. I think it's cool that they made a Venus Flytrap Pokemon. The name is Prime. Carnivine just is like perfect for that Pokemon in terms of a name, so solid, but just not my favorite either. At number 80 is Skorupi, and I really like Skorupi and Drapion. I think Drapion is obviously one of the cooler Sinnoh Pokemon, you could say, and Skorupi is sort of an extension of that, just in a littler, more baby form, but it's never really been a Pokemon I've used either, which is why it's lower. At number 79 is Hippowdon, and Hippowdon is a solid Pokemon. I was kind of surprised when I saw for the first time that they actually had a Hippo Pokemon in the Sinnoh region, but I do like Hippopotas a little bit better for reasons I'll talk about in a sec, so that's why Hippowdon is here. Number 78 is Drapion, and basically Drapion is here for the same reason that Skorupi is a couple spots behind, because it's really cool, but I've just never really used it before, and there's other Pokemon in Sinnoh I like better. Up next is Abomasnow and Snover, and these Pokemon are really interesting because they have the grass ice typing, which is pretty unique. Snover in particular has a more unique look to it as well, so it catches your attention whenever you see it. Especially when I saw it for the first time, it really kind of caught my attention as like a, whoa, what is this kind of Pokemon? And Mega Abomasnow is also freaking awesome, so they get some bonus points for that as well, but obviously not my favorite Sinnoh Pokemon either. And coming in at number 75 is Hippopotas. I really like Hippopotas because it's a different way to do a Hippo Pokemon in my opinion. Like I said, I wasn't even expecting to see a Hippo Pokemon in a region like Sinnoh, so I was surprised when I first saw it, and the fact that it's a ground type and just does the whole Hippo thing a little bit differently than you would expect, that gets a lot of brownie points in my book. At number 74 is Happiny, and I think Happiny is really adorable. It does kind of get this position on the list because similar to Badoo, I think they could have kind of gotten away without having Chansey have a pre-evolution, but I am still happy that it exists because I love baby Pokemon in general, and Happiny is adorable, so overall I'm okay with it. At number 73 is Stunky, and once again, with this being a stinky skunk Pokemon that's kind of has a theme of farting like its evolution, I can only rank it so high, but the one thing I really love about Stunky is that its cheeks are like a gas mask, which is such an ingenious design trait, And those are the kinds of things I really love in Pokemon, is when they have those kinds of ingenious design traits where things just sort of blend together really seamlessly like that. And so Stunky gets, like, I've really grown to like Stunky a lot more than I recently did, ever since I realized that. At number 72 is Cherubi, and Cherubi would have been a lot lower because it's literally just a cherry Pokemon with a face if it hadn't been for another ingenious detail to this Pokemon's design that I recently learned. Cherubi gets part of its name from the word cherubic, which means childlike, basically. That's kind of, it just has to do, it's a word having to do with children or child or being childlike, and that just goes perfectly with Cherubi's design because it's a little first stage Pokemon. It's obviously young, but it also sounds like cherry and ruby, so it goes along with the other parts of its name and its description and its design, and so it just blends perfectly together, and I really love those elements in Pokemon designs, like I said, so that's why Cherubi is much higher than it would have been otherwise. Up next is Lopunny and Baniri, and I really like these two Pokemon because, first of all, Baniri, it's like the only Pokemon that has base 0 friendship other than like legendaries and mythicals, and so it basically hates you, which I think is really funny for a bunny Pokemon. And also with Lopunny, it's not like my favorite Pokemon ever. I wouldn't really ever use it, but I think it's kind of interesting that Game Freak had the guts to make a Playboy bunny Pokemon, so I mean, overall, it's a solid Pokemon in my book. At number 69 is Monferno, and once again, we've kind of got the starter middle evolution syndrome here, but it's much better than Grotle. And also, I'm not the biggest fan of the Chimchar line as a whole. I think they're good designs, and I can recognize that and respect that. They're just not like my style, I guess you could say, personally, and so that's why Monferno is a little lower. At number 68 is Uxie, the first of the Lake Trio, and Uxie of the 3 Lake Trio Pokemon is kind of the most boring in my opinion. It just looks the most boring and the least appealing, so I don't necessarily dislike it, but it is kind of just meh in terms of the Lake Trio, so that's why it's lower. At number 67 is Lumineon. This is a Pokemon that a lot of other people describe as meh, but I don't think it's meh at all. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I talked about this in a recent video, but in terms of standard fish Pokemon, I think Lumineon is, and its pre-evolution Finneon, are as solid as they come, so I do not have any complaints whatsoever with Lumineon, and Finneon like a lot of other people do. At 66 is Azelf, and Azelf overall is a really solid Pokemon, but it does kind of get the mid to lower tier ranking on this list because of the, like, I guess you could say roaming legendary trios like Lake Trio, legendary beasts, the legendary golems, the sub-legendary trio of every Pokemon region basically. The Lake Trio are kind of like some of the more boring of that group in my opinion, and so even though I like Azelf, that's pretty much part of the reason why it, along with Uxie, are kind of in this lower portion of the list still. And number 65 is Mesprit for that exact same reason. It is my favorite of the 3, which kind of makes sense because it's supposed to sort of be the leader of the group. It kind of got designated with that role, but yeah, there are better legendary trios out there in my opinion. At number 64 is another legendary Pokemon, and that would be Cresselia. Now, I really appreciate and respect Cresselia, don't really have any problem with it, but at the same time, it always left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth when I was a kid, and I didn't have access to the Darkrai event, and I liked Darkrai a lot more than Cresselia, so without access to the Darkrai event, I was pretty much stuck with basically the discount brand version of Darkrai, which is Cresselia. Like, that's literally what Cresselia is. It's the one that you can get without that special event. It's not as secretive, it's not as elusive, and it just doesn't look as cool either in my opinion. So Cresselia is basically discount Darkrai, and that's why it's lower on the list. At number 63 is Finneon, and just like I said with Lumineon, Finneon is wonderful. I especially like Finneon in particular because it's cute, it's adorable, I really like its color scheme. I think that pops, especially for a standard fish Pokemon, and so for being that basic kind of fish Pokemon, I think Finneon is a phenomenal design. And I don't want to hear from any of you Finneon haters out there because you're just wrong. You're just wrong. At number 62 is Vespiquen, and I have a lot of fond memories with Vespiquen. It was a Pokemon I believe I used on my very first playthrough of Pokemon Pearl, which was the game I played back in the day, and overall it's just a solid Pokemon. It's cool that it's a female-only evolution, which I personally totally stumbled into without really knowing, and its design is cool too with how its dress is like honeycomb shaped and things like that. So ultimately, even though once again it's sort of to the mid to lower tier point of this list, I really like Vespiquen, and that just goes to show how crazy good Sinnoh's Pokedex is. At number 61 is Prinplup, and personally I think it's the best of the middle evolutions for the Sinnoh starters because I just like the Piplup line the best out of the three. And yeah, overall it is still a middle evolution, so it's not like the greatest starter Pokemon or Pokemon in general ever, but overall I think it's a solid Pokemon, and I enjoy having one on my team while I'm waiting to evolve it into Empoleon. At number 60 is Magmortar. I really love that they gave Magmar an evolution. But Magmortar definitely could have been better as well. It does kind of have a goofy look to it, which ultimately has always really held it back for me, and I think a lot of other people as well. But just the simple fact that they gave Magmar an evolution gets Magmortar a lot of points already, and so that's pretty much what brings it to this level of the list. On that same note is Licky, and unlike so many other people, I really like Licky a lot, because guess what guys, not every Pokemon has to be super cool. It is a good thing that we have some derpy Pokemon out there, and Licky fills that role perfectly. The reason why Garchomp is so cool and everyone thinks it's like the best Pokemon ever is because Licky is one of those Pokemon that took that sacrifice and basically just derped itself up so Garchomp could look better by comparison. So if you like Garchomp, you need to thank Licky for its sacrifice and recognize that it's a cool Pokemon, and it's cool that a previous Pokemon in Lickitung got an evolution. Like, just pay it some respect. At number 58 is Chimchar, and this is our first of the base forms of the starter Pokemon on this list. Like I said, the Chimchar line as a whole are not really my personal favorites. I personally thought that Chimchar was kind of weird as a starter Pokemon when I first saw it, so once again, it's the first impression thing, kind of leaving a bad taste in my mouth, but it's certainly not the worst starter Pokemon ever, I'll give it that much, and the line as a whole is still pretty cool. I can at least recognize that even if it's not my thing. At number 57 is Mantike, and Mantike gets overlooked a ton, I think, in terms of the baby Pokemon demographic. It's a great baby Pokemon. I think it's awesome that they stayed true to the whole Remoraid-Mantine relationship with its evolution method, because you have to have a Remoraid in your party in order to be able to evolve Mantike into Mantine. So overall, just a really great Pokemon, and I'm glad they gave an evolution, or a pre-evolution rather, to Mantine, which just makes it that much cooler. At number 56 is Palkia, and Palkia is officially our first of the box art legendary Pokemon of Sinnoh, and once again, another bad sort of taste in my mouth because I had to play Pokemon Pearl back in the day even though I wanted to play Diamond. My brother and I both wanted to play Diamond. We played rock, paper, scissors to see who got Diamond because our parents wouldn't both let us get Diamond because I don't know why, but that was the rule, and my brother got Diamond, I got Pearl, and so that memory has always been associated with Palkia for me, and it always will be, so it will never really be like top tier in my opinion because of that. At number 55 is Mamoswine, and once again, it's not my favorite of the Sinnoh evolutions, but just the simple fact that they gave Piloswine an evolution I really appreciate, and overall it's got a really solid design, so it gets this really solid ranking. At number 54 is Heatran, and Heatran is often referred to as the forgotten legendary of Sinnoh, but I think it's really actually pretty cool. Yeah, it's kind of just tucked away in the post-game at Stark Mountain, but I think it's a really awesome looking Pokemon. I think it's got a cool design, so I don't dislike it by any means, even if a lot of people think it's forgettable. Up next at I'm pretty sure this is basically like the midpoint of the list, we've got Bastiodon and Shieldon. Originally, once again, because I was playing Pearl version, I didn't really like these guys as much. I preferred Cranidos and Rampardos, so I kind of just got stuck with these guys, but now that years and years have passed, I have grown to appreciate their designs, especially Bastiodon with its whole faceplate thing that looks like a castle wall at the same time. I think that's really ingenious and cool, so overall I do enjoy these guys. At 51, we've got Porygon Z, and similar to Mamoswine, obviously not my favorite of the Sinnoh evolutions. I think overall it's obviously pretty similar in body style and everything, doesn't change too much compared to its pre-evolutions, but I really love its concept that it was supposed to be Porygon 3, but then it got corrupted and just ended up as this glitchy mess. I think that's really, really awesome as a concept for a Pokemon, and so it gets a ton of points from me for that. At number 50 is Chatot, and Chatot obviously is not like the greatest Pokemon ever. It is just a standalone Pokemon, but it gets a bunch of points because it was one of the early Sinnoh Pokemon that was like first revealed before anything else when we were still in Generation 3, which gave it an allure and gave it really a lot of hype. And I also remember using it back in the day on the DS and using its chatter move, and you could like record your voice and have it say whatever you wanted. That was a bunch of fun. And I really like its design too. I love how its head is shaped like a music note, its tail is shaped like a metronome, just really awesome. At number 49 is Regigigas, and I really like Regigigas because of the fact that they made a Pokemon that was a trio master to a previous set of legendary Pokemon from a previous generation. I really like when Game Freak sort of build on the lore that they've established with Pokemon from previous generations and just build on Pokemon from previous generations in general, which is what Regigigas does, and so it gets the seal of approval from me. At number 48 is Infernape, and once again, this line is not my cup of tea, but I do recognize that Infernape is pretty cool, and there are worse fire starters out there, that's for sure, and so I will give Infernape its due, even though it's not my favorite. At number 47 is Magnezone, and I mean, pretty much I'm just going to say the same thing about all the Sinnoh evolutions. I love that they did them. I just love that concept so much of giving older Pokemon new evolutions, and I think Magnezone is a really cool design as well. I don't know how maybe necessary it was. I think we wouldn't have died if a Magnezone never existed, but overall it's still pretty cool. At number 46 and number 45 is Rampardos and Cranidos, and these guys are my preferred fossil Pokemon from Sinnoh. I unfortunately haven't got the chance to use them that much because, like I said, I had Pearl version back in the day, and so they were just out of the question for me as far as being able to use them in that game, and I don't know why I didn't trade with my brother, but I just didn't. Maybe I was salty or something. But yeah, overall, I think these are really cool fossil Pokemon. I really love they just look cool, and sometimes when a Pokemon just looks cool, that's enough for it to be really awesome and beloved, and I kind of think that's what these Pokemon do. At number 44 is Dusknoir, and once again, it's the whole evolution thing. I don't necessarily feel like I would have cried if Dusclops never got an evolution, but I'm happy it did, and I can appreciate the heck out of it. I love the concept in general, so Dusknoir gets this upper tier ranking on this list. At number 43 is Rhyperior, and I personally don't dislike, I should say, Rhyperior as much as everyone else does. I do feel like it was a little unnecessary. I think Rhydon is very much like a fully evolved Pokemon, so it didn't really need to evolve again, but it's also one of the coolest Pokemon ever, so for it to have an evolution is awesome. And yeah, its design leaves something to be desired in that department. But I still enjoy it. I really do. I'm not as much of a hater as everyone else is. At number 42 is Gliscor. I think Gliscor is one of those Sinnoh evolutions that kind of just gets lost in the shuffle, but I think Gligar is a Pokemon that really did need an evolution, because otherwise it would have just been forgotten about forever. It would have just been in the abyss. You wouldn't ever really remember that it even existed. So Gliscor was very much needed, and it was very much needed, I should say, and it was very cool. So I really like it. At number 41 is Tangrowth. Now this really hits the spot for me, or starts to hit the spot for me with the evolutions, because once again, it gets points because Tangela really needed an evolution, but it also gets points because I really love the design. I think the design is a perfect step up from Tangela. It makes a lot of sense. It just looks nice, and so I really love Tangrowth as an evolution to Tangela, and I just love it. It's cool. At number 40 is Dialga, and Dialga is really cool. I love that they made a time Pokemon that's all dedicated to time, because time in general is a super cool concept to explore, and I'm kind of hoping they do that with Legends Arceus. I guess we'll see. But overall, like, not really my favorite legendary of all time necessarily, but certainly not a bad one either. At number 39 is Electivire, and when it comes to Electivire, it's pretty much just cool for the sake of cool. Like I said, it does also get a bunch of points for being an evolution to a previous Pokemon, and the fact that it's an evolution to Electabuzz just makes it all the cooler, but also it just is really cool looking, and sometimes that's enough. At number 38 is Buizel, and Buizel is just one of the iconic Sinnoh Pokemon. It obviously was revealed early in the Generation 3 era, which gave it a lot of hype, and it just has a really cool, unique design in general. Like I said, I really loved having it on my team until Floatzel came along, and that kind of just rained on the parade a little bit that I had with Buizel, but Buizel itself is still really, really cool. At number 37 is Yanmega, and Yanmega is a lot like these other Sinnoh evolutions we've been talking about recently. It gets points because Yanma really needed an evolution, and it gets a ton of points for looking really, really cool. The only thing that detracts from it a little bit is the fact that it's not dragon type, despite being a dragonfly and being super sinister looking. Like, they had the chance to make a dragon bug type Pokemon, and they just didn't go with it, and like, it would be so much cooler if it was actually Dragon Bug. At number 36 is Mismagius, and Mismagius is pretty stinking cool. Misdreavus, that's its name. It needed an evolution. It desperately got what it needed with Mismagius, and Mismagius is a great design and a great follow-up that just makes all the sense in the world, and so it is definitely one of the better Sinnoh evolutions in my opinion. At number 35, along those same lines, is Roserade. Roselia is probably, it's basically kind of like Gen 3's Misdreavus in a way, where, yeah, it was a standalone Pokemon. It probably would have been forgotten about a lot more if it didn't get the evolution, so the fact that it did really helped it out a lot, and I really, really love its whole masquerade theme, and I really love how kind of seamlessly it blends into its design to where it's not too over the top, but it's there enough for you to appreciate it, and that is just the recipe for a great Pokemon design. At number 34 is Munchlax, and Munchlax doesn't really have a lot going for it in the design department because it really is just a baby Snorlax and it's got kind of a plain design, but the hype that came along with Munchlax in late Generation 3 was unparalleled. The pre-evolution to Snorlax, are you kidding me? That was just so hype, and that is honestly really carried with it to this day, and it's just kind of an adorable Pokemon in general. At number 33 and 32 are two more baby Pokemon, and that would be Bonsly and Mime Jr. I like Mime Jr. a little bit more than Bonsly, but these two are just iconic, they're awesome, they are amazing baby Pokemon, and I really, really love how they made them sort of a duo, based around the fact that they both evolve into Pokemon that mimic things, with Sudowoodo mimicking a tree and Mr. Mime being a mime. That is ingenious because these Pokemon are not related in any way whatsoever, but they found a way to relate them to each other in a way that just makes all the sense in the world, and so I really love that aspect of these two Pokemon. Up next at number 31 is Leafeon, and a lot of people like to bag on Leafeon and say it's one of the lesser Eeveelutions. Well, even though I don't like it as much as Glaceon, obviously, I still really like Leafeon a lot. Like, I mean, yeah, there are other ways you could have done a grass-type evolution, I guess, but I think I think Leafeon looks really cool, and just the fact that we got not one but two Eeveelutions in this generation was awesome, and they are one of the last Eeveelutions that we've gotten. The only other one we got after Leafeon and Glaceon is Sylveon, and we're kind of in the middle of a drought, so I will appreciate the Eeveelutions when I get them, and I certainly appreciate Leafeon. At number 30 is Manaphy. Manaphy is a pretty cool mythical Pokemon. I don't really have a lot of personal connection to it, but I really do appreciate the fact that it had a cool quest associated with it in the transferring over from Pokemon Ranger, and the fact that you could only get one per physical copy of the game, which made it all the more rare, and it's also cool that it hatched from an egg too. That gave it some individuality, so I really do like Manaphy a lot. However, I like its counterpart Phione just a little bit more, and I think that could possibly be like an unpopular opinion, because a lot of people like to trash on Phione and say it's like just a dumb Pokemon that shouldn't exist, and like it's just too similar to Manaphy. There's a bunch of reasons why people like to make fun of Phione, but I think Phione from a design perspective looks better than Manaphy, so that's why it gets the higher ranking. At number 28 is Glaceon, and Glaceon shares all the same sentiments that Leafeon does, that I mentioned earlier, but it is also my favorite Eeveelution of all time to this point, and so it has a special place in my heart for that. At number 27 is Pachirisu, and boy oh boy is Pachirisu a freaking good Pikachu clone. Like, people sort of take or leave the Pikachu clones as a whole. Some like them more than others. I personally like them a lot, and Pachirisu is just a great Pikachu clone. It's not even my favorite Pikachu clone. It's not even my second favorite Pikachu clone. I'll leave those rankings for possibly other videos of other regions that we do, but Pachirisu is awesome. I love its design. It's a great Pokemon, great Pikachu clone. At number 26 is Gallade, and Gallade is kind of just like a mind-blowing Pokemon, or at least it was for me, because obviously it's one of those Sinnoh evolutions, but it's one that is evolving is a part of a family that already had a fully evolved Pokemon in Gardevoir, so you didn't expect the Ralts family to get another member added to it, and so that was just mind-blowing back in the day. And it's also got just a really cool typing as well. Psychic Fighting, that's awesome. I've also used Gallade myself several times. It's a great, awesome Pokemon to have on your team. It looks really cool, and its mega is Seto Kaiba. What more can you ask for? At number 25 is Giratina, and Giratina is obviously my favorite of the three box art legends for Generation 4 and the Sinnoh-based games. Giratina is really cool. I love that in Diamond and Pearl it's kind of tucked away at the send-off spring, and you sort of have to go looking for it, and you end up in this creepy cemetery-like place. That's awesome. And then obviously it got all the glow up in the world with Platinum and the Distortion world, and I just love the fact that Game Freak decided to make a devil Pokemon, which is what Giratina essentially is. I love that they went there, and that's kind of what does it for Giratina for me. That was number 25, so officially breaking into the top 25 along with Giratina is Honchkrow at number 24. Honchkrow is so cool, I can't even stand it. It is an evolution that was desperately needed, so it gets huge points for giving Murkrow some representation and giving something that it needed, and the design is just mwah, chef's kiss. I love how they make the mob boss hat into sort of its feathers, and they give like the puffy big mobster chest. They sort of integrate that beautifully into a bird Pokemon. I just love everything about this Pokemon, and I would have a Honchkrow on my team any day of the week. At number 23 is Torterra, and Torterra is really awesome. It is my opinion that the Sinnoh starters as a whole, from first stage to last stage, and particularly the last stage, are the best group of starters that we've ever got, and Torterra is a big reason why. I think it's really cool. The typing that it has is really cool, Grass Ground, and it's just a really awesome final evolution for a starter Pokemon. At number 22 is Spiritomb, and Spiritomb is just awesome because of the way you go about obtaining it in the game. Its design is okay, like there's nothing bad about its design, but it doesn't really like just grip you either. It's not the coolest thing in the world either, but the thing that is really cool is of course how you go about obtaining this Pokemon and doing the whole underground connection, and you sort of have to figure it out. It's like a puzzle. It's one of those classic Pokemon events that we just want to have back in Pokemon, and it's kind of like the poster child for that in a way. So that's what gets it this high of a ranking on my list. At number 21 is Combee, and boy, oh boy, do I love me some Combee. Just like cool Pokemon can sometimes just be cool and that's enough, cute Pokemon can sometimes just be cute and that's enough, and Combee has that going for it just in spades. Like, Combee is such an adorable Pokemon. It's also a really creative design for a bee Pokemon, and it's also really cool that you obtain it, or at least in the Sinnoh games anyway, with the honey mechanic. That's another point in its favor, and even though it's kind of annoying, the fact that only females can evolve into Vespiquen and it has that sort of angle going for it too is just really cool. There's just a lot of really cool facets to Combee. Breaking into the top 20, we have Drifloon. Drifloon is amazing. The thing that really helps it out a lot is, once again, like Spiritomb, it's an event Pokemon. Back in the day, it would just randomly show up at the Valley Windworks every Friday, but you might have not known that at first, and so you sort of had to figure out, like, how do I get this Pokemon to appear? And that is some of the just quintessential magic of Pokemon games that make us all love the game so much. And so for Drifloon being a big representation of that, and also having an amazing set of Pokedex entries and a backstory where it steals children and sends them to the underworld, it easily is a top 20 Pokemon from Sinnoh. At number 19 is Darkrai, and like I said, Cresselia was pretty much discount Darkrai. Well, Darkrai is the real deal. It's got a cool event associated with it, its design is freaking amazing, it's got a movie with one of the best musical themes we've ever heard in Pokemon ever, which is Erasion. I actually made a cover of it a while ago, so Darkrai just really has everything going for it. At number 18 is Rotom. Now, Rotom is also really cool, obviously. I really love the fact that it's based on Pulseman, which is another one of Game Freak's games from before they made Pokemon, so I really love that they referenced their own history in a new Pokemon design, and obviously it's got all the charm, it's got the new forms, everything about it is good, but I think we also need to pump our brakes on the Rotom stuff just a little bit, because Rotom is now everywhere these days, and if they are not careful, they're gonna oversaturate Rotom a little bit, I think. And so that's sort of why I had to temper Rotom a little bit and put it pretty high, but not too high on my list. At number 17 is a Pokemon you might not expect to be this high, and that is Kricketot. I frickin' love Kricketot. I would never really use one on my team because, like we already talked about, Kricketune is pretty low on my list, but Kricketot's design is pure genius. It's got the music motif just like Kricketune, but it blends it into its design so just so perfectly. It's got its antenna, which are basically like they're like the gramophone, like old style music horn things. The name is escaping me right now. It's also got like a jacket, like a conductor's jacket. It's got the lines down its chest and its stomach that are supposed to look like a stringed instrument, and it's even like, I think its arms even kind of look like notes on a piece of musical notation, with those lines being the different notes. Like, it's just everything about Kricketot's design is executed to perfection, and it's this kind of design is my favorite kind of Pokemon design, when they blend elements like that together. So Kricketot, you're beautiful. At number 16 is Weavile, and Weavile gets a lot of points for being an evolution, because I love those evolutions to previous Pokemon, but it is definitely one of those Pokemon that's just cool for the sake of cool, and boy oh boy is it cool. It's got the blade hands, it's got the smug attitude, it just looks really cool in general. It's just one of those Pokemon, man, and it freaking nails what it tries to do. At number 15 is Frostlass, and Frostlass gets a ton of points because it, in my opinion, saved the Snorunt line. Like, Snorunt is pretty cool. It's a pretty interesting Pokemon. But in my opinion, Glalie is kind of just like, meh, whatever. So the fact that they gave it a split evolution, gave it Frostlass, and Frostlass is as cool as it is, just Frostlass came in so clutch for this family of Pokemon, in my opinion. And on its own, it's just really, really cool as well. So easily one of the best Sinnoh evolutions that we got from this generation. At number 14 is Turtwig, and what else do I need to say? Turtwig is a phenomenal first stage starter Pokemon. I don't not love anything about it. It's just a really just awesome, just top of the line quality starter Pokemon design. And the thing is, it's obviously not even my favorite starter design from Sinnoh, which once again speaks to how good Sinnoh's Pokemon are. At number 13, 12, and 11 are Luxio, Shinx, and Luxray. These Pokemon are fan favorites for a very good reason, obviously, because they're freaking awesome. Shinx is just a really cool and cute looking Pokemon, which is great. Luxio, it's a middle evolution, yeah, but it still is solid and still hits all the same beats that its evolution and pre-evolution do, and Luxray is about as cool as they come. This has definitely got to be one of, if not the coolest early game Pokemon that you can pretty much get right away, and I think that's part of the reason why it's so cool, is because everyone had a chance to get it on their team and just be able to see how cool this Pokemon actually is. Yeah, maybe it could be an electric dark type. That's what people like to talk about when they talk about Luxray, but even if it's not, it's still freaking awesome. And now we get into the top 10, and at number 10 is Togekiss. Togekiss, in my opinion, is the best Sinnoh evolution of them all, because it literally just hits all the beats. It's obviously an evolution to a previous Pokemon, so it's got that going for it, but then it was such a needed addition too. Togepi and Togetic definitely needed a third Pokemon to really help their line as a whole, and Togekiss did that, and Togekiss just, its design is just so good. So not only did it provide a need that was needed for Togepi, but it did it in a really cool looking way with its design, and then it just got even cooler when it got the Fairy type in Gen 6, so everything about Togekiss is just like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and that's why it gets the number 10 spot. At number 9 is Shaymin, and I really, really love Shaymin a lot because in terms of legendary and mythical Pokemon, it's just kind of a breath of fresh air. No pun intended. Yeah, there are other legendaries and mythicals that are small and cute, but Shaymin kind of just does that thing, that style of Pokemon, in its own unique way, to where it doesn't really look necessarily like a mythical Pokemon, but that's actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It just has a really unique, awesome look to it. I love that it's not like all about power and just like, it doesn't have tons of crazy power like all the other mythicals and legends do. Like, it does have power, obviously, but it's just kind of a peaceful little, like, it's a peaceful little literal hedgehog, and it's adorable, which is why I've got a plush of it back there. You can't really see it, but it's just a great Pokemon. I love it. At number 8 is Arceus, and Arceus, I really like Arceus, not so much for its design or even its lore, because we don't really know that much about it. Hopefully that will change in Pokemon Legends Arceus. I just love the fact that Game Freak dared to make a god Pokemon. I love the fact that a god of the Pokemon world actually exists, because that's kind of a pretty bold Pokemon design to have, and I love that they went for it. I love the amount of lore potential that it has, even if we haven't got that much lore from Arceus, and so it just adds a lot of layers to the Pokemon world to have a god Pokemon, and that's why I love Arceus. At number 7 is my favorite of the first forms of the starter Pokemon of Sinnoh, and that would be Piplup. Piplup is adorable. Piplup has a really cool looking design. It does those awesome things that I love in Pokemon designs where they blend elements together seamlessly with its whole... It's kind of got like a knight sort of get up, like a knave style thing where its head and then its little tufts on its chest and its back are sort of meant to represent that helmet hat thing that knights wear. I think like that's the general vibe it's going for, but it does it in a way that's like you wouldn't even notice it unless you really look at it. And then it's also got the crown symbol on its forehead as well that blends in perfectly. So it's just like Piplup just does pretty much everything about a Pokemon design. It does it like so well, and that's why I love it. At number 6, 5, and 4 are Gabite, Gible, and Garchomp in that order. And what do I need to say? Garchomp is freaking amazing. Obviously, it's one of the coolest Pokemon of all time, and sometimes, like we've been saying, cool for the sake of cool can do it. And then Gible, as a first stage, it's also a really cool looking Pokemon, but it does it in a cute sort of way as well. And then Gabite, I was going to put Gabite lower because it's definitely the worst of the three, but it's also basically just a mini Garchomp, so I can't really rank it that low. So overall, these are phenomenal Pokemon. And at number 3 and number 2 are Riolu and Lucario. Riolu made it up this high because, once again, just like Gabite, it's basically just a mini Lucario. And what do I need to say about Lucario? Lucario is kind of the epitome of cool. It is the epitome of just like, it's just a really, really awesome Pokemon design. And then it also had the hype going for it with being one of the early Gen 4 Pokemon that was revealed. It got its own movie before, I think it got its own movie before Gen 4 had even been out, because I think Lucario and the Mystery of Mew was like the last Hoenn movie, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong on that, but it got a movie nevertheless. It's a Smash Bros character. It's basically kind of like one of Pokemon's mascots in a way. That's how good it is, and it gets all those things for a very good reason, because it is that good. And finally, I know it's been a while, but we are now to my number 1 favorite Sinnoh Pokemon, and that would be none other than Empoleon. Boy, oh boy, do I love Empoleon. First off, it just looks really cool. It looks like a Pokemon that you would love to have on your team. When it evolves from Prinplup, it's got that wow factor where it's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, this is my starter Pokemon. But then it's got those seamless kind of elements that blend together in Pokemon designs that I've been saying I like so much, and it does that with its secondary inspiration, which is Napoleon Bonaparte, who was a French emperor, and it's also based on an emperor penguin. And it's actually like, not only is that in its name, Empoleon, Emperor Napoleon, but they even went the extra mile and made Empoleon's height and weight similar to that of Napoleon Bonaparte. And I just think the attention to detail on that is really, really nice. And then it's also represented in its just its body decor, I guess you could say, as well. So overall, Empoleon is the best, what can I say? It's my favorite Sinnoh Pokemon. And there we have it. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Please let me know who your favorite Sinnoh Pokemon are in the comments below as well. And be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will also be back with a new one very, very soon. So until then, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you very much, and I will smell you guys later.